Is it all just a dream? Are these adventures just our characters' nightmares? Little nightmares. What is up, SmackNPie? SmackNPie here, and welcome back to another Little Nightmares video on the channel. Today, I got a very interesting video for you guys. I am going to discuss the possibility of all this happening inside the brain of our protagonists in Little Nightmares 3. I hope that's not the case, but at the same time, I'm open to possibility. But let me at least make the case of this being just a nightmare / dream, but not in a way you think. It's not like when you wake up, it's over. No. Let's get started. First of all, let's start with the obvious. Of course, Tarsier Studios come out and said that they're done with Little Nightmares universe. Of course, the legal obligations that they have with Bandai Namco for the next gen upgrade, maybe some DLC for Little Nightmares 2, that'll drop later this year. But even if those DLC were to come out, they would be more about the Spoon Girl and the Toddler and the Fat Kid, Signal Tower, Mono, Pale City Teacher, all those characters. I'm talking about collective Little Nightmares universe as a whole. Story-wise, let's start with the obvious one, and that is the dream / nightmare explanation that Bandai Namco uploaded to their YouTube channel leading up to the release of Little Nightmares 2, where they basically put the idea in players' heads that this might just be dreams and nightmares and hallucinations, and can you spot the difference, ooh and whatnot. At that point, I kinda hated the idea back then, but as I'm thinking more into this, I am actually grown to like the idea. Let's just assume that Little Nightmares trilogy happens, and only the trilogy happens. After trilogy, it's not about Six and Mono anymore. We go into alternate timeline in another world of Little Nightmares universe, or just another alternate universe of Little Nightmares for Little Nightmares 4. From that point onwards, they won't use Little Nightmares 4 as a title, but Little Nightmares and something else, because Little Nightmares needs to establish as a brand franchise, because we know Little Nightmares TV show is in works, so they can have more content out there for directors, producers, studio executives to pick and choose from. But that's besides the point. Coming back to the point at hand, if, and as you can tell, I'm super passionate about this being a trilogy for Six and Mono, specifically 6, if Bandai Namco goes through with this, it is very obvious that they would need some sort of ending to wrap it all up for the first 2 games. Now, of course, the idea of, in Little Nightmares 3, you play as a new character, which is still connected to Pale City, to the Maw, to the Nest, which is still connected to Six and Mono and their actions. You still see Six and Mono in Little Nightmares 3 going around because of their actions and consequences going through the entire universe of Little Nightmares. But at the end, Bandai Namco pulls the trigger. Our protagonist, whoever we're controlling in Little Nightmares 3, wakes up and realizes that it was all just a dream. However, just when the character thinks that it was all just a dream, a nightmare, a little nightmare, they get a feeling that those nightmares have transformed and transcended from being in our head to our physical world into the reality. And that is something I would actually stand up with. It's not the best ending to a trilogy that is so popular, but it is still something that I would defend them for. Now, with that being said, allow me to make some points. Now, we've seen imagery of kids being held up, okay? We've seen that in Very Little Nightmares. We've seen that in Little Nightmares 1. We've seen that in Little Nightmares 2. We've seen that in comics. We've also seen that in the art book of Little Nightmares 2 that gives a lot about how these kids are being treated and being prepared. Now, the end goal for them is different. In the Maw, it was to be fed to the guest. Here, it is for other different reasons. So the main point I'm trying to draw home here is that, yes, sure, even if it is a dream, just a nightmare, there is an influence behind those nightmares and those dreams. There is a reason our protagonists are seeing those nightmares. Now, we know how these long characters, everything stretched, buildings bended, flesh walls, everything getting bigger and bigger is something that you see in nightmares as a kid. A kid would perceive teacher who is very obsessive or even abusive as the teacher we saw in Little Nightmares 2, doctor, and you get the point. But those are influenced by something, or in my case, the theory that I'm presenting is by some events, or are by some events. And that is where my theory comes into play. If you go all the way back in Very Little Nightmares, most specifically when you start seeing Six running around, that was a crucial point for me personally. Developers clearly wanted to show that, not just because, oh hey look, it's a familiar character, maybe they did, but to me, I saw it more as a massive point, a telling from the developers. The way I see it is that all these characters are going through these tortures, going through fighting these monsters, their inner demons even, Six for example, Shadow 6, it's clearly because they have been affected by it in real life, hence they're seeing those nightmares in the first place. Now, I have researched about this since it is heavily heavily inspired by the Japanese culture when it comes to specifically towards the horror side, the disturbing side of many depiction of Japanese culture. On the low class side, you have your self-isolation, which we've seen in Little Nightmares. You have your child abuse, which is still a massive deal, and I'm not gonna speak like I know what I'm talking about. It's just something that is everywhere, so I'm just gonna collectively say that. We've seen child abduction, which we've seen in Little Nightmares, both abusive parents, abusive people, child abduction. Then we've seen hunger is such a big issue there as well, just like in Little Nightmares. I mean, the game was literally supposed to be called Hunger, then they changed that. Loneliness, another channel who make excellent videos on Little Nightmares, propose the idea of loneliness and whatnot. And then you also see the suicide theme being attached to it in the first Little Nightmares, and it goes even deep. So there are deep levels that it is clearly a story here that is inspired by the real life events in this interpretation and perception of our protagonist. So all in all, our protagonists have gone through the torture, have gone through this experience or these experiences, the pain, going through the abuse from parents, child abduction, getting tortured, being neglected, being lonely. Mono and Thin Man, father's son, father who would stay at work for hours, not giving his son much time. Mono's fear was not to end up like Thin Man, but he still ended up like Thin Man anyway to get the job. And poverty is another issue, massive issue that this game also touches. For Six and Lady Geisha, I will touch these themes in depth in the future videos, but just to TLDR, Six sees Lady Geisha and the guests as a normal household. It's all about being a housewife, feeding guests, whilst putting on this face. No matter how broken, how much pain you are suffering from the inside, which was hinted, and this is just me saying stuff at the top of my head. Hopefully you're getting what I'm trying to go for, that there are deep themes hidden in every single thing, except the point that I'm trying to make is that these nightmares that our protagonists are seeing are caused by the events in their real life. Now, what would happen when the nightmare is over? Will they wake up in their home and everything will be fine? Will they wake up in a hospital? Or are they in coma? That would explain why Mono is in this endless cycle, because he's in coma, he can't wake up there, he can end his suffering here. For Six, it is a whole lot different story. So there are many issues with the whole dream and nightmare and waking up when it is all over, but I would love to see them going that route. Imagine if in Little Nightmares 3, the ending is our protagonists wake up and they see sunshine and their family members and their parents come in and they're so supportive and loving and caring, and they look out through the window and the entire city is alive and everyone is happy, and you finally get that dream ending, a good happy ending in Little Nightmares franchise, a perfect way to end the trilogy. Except you see the same ending, the zoom out panning of our protagonist standing smiling, but there is some eerie feeling in that ending. There's some presence that our protagonist is feeling only when they realize that those nightmares, visually, they might have ended when I woke up, but they transformed and transcended into reality. And that would line up perfectly with why Bandai Namco posted that video in the first place, is to plant seeds. Ladies and gentlemen, I would leave you here. Now go on, think about this. Do let me know the idea of having this as an ending to a trilogy. Then you can have Little Nightmares 4 with completely new universe, with completely different set of settings, plot. You don't need all this Maw, Nest, whatever. You can really kind of sort of turn your direction towards the other characters, and then maybe in the future you have some Easter eggs pointing towards the trilogy. But I would leave you here, ladies and gentlemen. Do let me know, what do you think? Subscribe right now, help me get to 75k. Thank you so much for the support. So many videos I have planned for Little Nightmares, so make sure you are stay tuned with this channel. Follow me on Twitter and Insta, there it's SmackNPie. I post news there as well and announcements, and I'll see you in the next video. So take care and freaking peace.